There we go. Alright, good morning once again, everybody. This is the bit where I talk for a little while, and then we all talk together for a little while, and then we eat food, which is the best bit of it. So these precepts are something, as you all know, I put together as kind of to represent the merged Buddhist traditions which we practice here at Red Clay. Last time we did the renewal with these, I talked about the 5 remembrances. So this time I'm going to pick up where I left off. I expect to talk about the 3 refuges briefly, and then spend a little more time on the 3 pure precepts, and then we will have a conversation, which means next time we'll do this together, we'll talk about the 5 trading precepts. Okay, so the 3 pure precepts. It's written, we said it first in Pali and second in English. They both mean exactly the same thing. Take refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. So, very simplistically, of course, Buddha is Buddha nature. It's Buddha, the self-awakened one, but it's also the Buddha nature that's within all of us. Dharma is the teaching, and everything can be the teaching. Like something I said about going on retreats. People say, working in the kitchen is practice. No, it can be. Everything can be the Dharma. That person cutting in front of us can be a teaching if we are willing to receive it. If we're not, we're probably missing it as a teaching. And then the Sangha, this is the Sangha. Right? Sangha is the harmonious community, the fellow practitioners. So all I will do with this one is tell you just a little personal story that happened yesterday morning. So we have a residential retreat coming up beginning Wednesday evening, and the person who's just arrived this morning, Beth, sitting at the back there, is our retreat manager. Thank you for being here, Beth. All the way from Mississippi. But I woke up yesterday morning. I mean, I had an unexpected trip. It wasn't totally unexpected, but it was unplanned, to Vietnam, which was a wonderful trip, that pilgrimage, but that was done for a reason, and it wasn't in my grand plan. That was time when I was going to clear the deck, so I'd be ready to prepare for the retreat. And then I had an addiction issue in my family, which consumed a huge amount of time, and is still consuming time. But, I mean, not everybody plays well together, and so the helping to manage around the playing together piece has taken a huge amount of time. And then, of course, I had my heart attack like 10 days ago, whenever it was, and that took a few days away. So yesterday, or the night before yesterday morning, a couple of nights ago, I realized how far from being ready I was. And I woke up ridiculously early yesterday morning. I decided, rather than try and go back to sleep, I'd just go and spend a couple of hours. So I woke up at 2 o'clock. I normally wake up at 4. So I woke up at 2 o'clock and thought, well, I'll just go spend a couple of hours in the office, and I'll work on Dharma talks, and then at 4 o'clock I'll be ready to drop into my normal routine. So I did, and the miracle happened at 4 o'clock when I went in to the room we set aside for meditation at the house. And I went in there, and I did my little prostrations and chant ahead of it, and I sat down, and that place is a refuge. And it was so beautiful. Everything over a period of, I was in there for a couple of hours, probably all told, but it happened very quickly, and then I came out of there just clean, fresh, clear. This is what the refuge is about. It's a place of safety. It's a place of peace. And I'm very lucky in that I've been practicing for a number of years, so I can go to that place relatively easily, excuse my English. But that's what this refuge is. It's a place where we go for sanctuary, if you like. And it's available everywhere. So that's the Dharma and the Buddha. And a couple of times a week, I walk into this room and spend a few hours with you people. This is my Sangha. And the same happens here. Everything else disappears. This is Sangha. This is peace. This is refuge. This is safety. And we're all here to help each other in that construct. It's beautiful. So that's refuge. And there's something, it begins very intentional. It's a move we have to decide we want to make. But it's one of these things where if we do it often enough, it becomes increasingly natural. So it just happens so naturally here, it happens so naturally in the space at home. But it's something that's there for me to draw on. Anytime I realize this is happening, I can stop and I can just do a one breath meditation. I can do it anywhere. It's always available. So this is refuge. The Pure Precepts. So I do not remember the verse, and I think actually it's 278 or 284, I believe, for some reason. I think it's 278 in the Dhammapada. Buddha says, do no harm. Well, this of course is a paraphrase of a bad English translation of something that was written in Pali, so he never actually said this, but close enough for our purposes. Do no harm, do good, purify the mind. This is the way of all the Buddhas. Dogen, and then the precepts arose out of the Pali Canon. That was not in the precepts. The precepts are pretty much what we have as the 5 training precepts, the original version of that. Dogen, in the 13th century, he was very erudite. He knew of a Chinese, it was a 4 kanji by 4 row, it was 4 kanji by 4 column, however you want to frame it, poem. And one of the beautiful things, if anybody wants to know about Chinese poetry, Benjamin at the back there is fluent in Mandarin, so he can tell you all of this stuff. But Chinese poetry, one of the reasons I would love to be able to speak Chinese, to understand Chinese, probably more the written language than the spoken language, is because of the beauty of the poetry. It's just written as this 4 by 4 grid, and they're pictograms, and each pictogram has a number of different pictorial references which line up and support the word, but they're not the same as the word. There's just this beautiful matrix in there. Anyway, Dogen came across this 4 by 4 poem, which basically says what I just said. Do no evil, do good, purify the mind, this is the way of all the Buddhas. And he wrote one of the fascicles in his 96 fascicle Shobogenzo, which is his masterwork, on just this verse. And this is what gives rise to the 3 pure precepts that come down to us. So the way I have framed them here, I vow to make every effort to embody non-violence and non-harming. Do no harm. What is this all about? Do no evil. The 3 cravings in Buddhism are craving for sensual pleasure, craving for becoming, and craving for non-becoming. So as feeling tones start landing on us, and we start getting, we start to experience world, we start to create our worlds. What happens, the things we like, so that sensual pleasure itself becomes really sticky, and the things we like, we want more of. We try and create this whole being out of it. And that's what in the 12-link chain of causation is what's called, ultimately that gives rise to birth. The birth of our world comes out of this sense of wanting more of this and wanting becoming. The flip of it is something we don't like so much, we want less of. And that's a direction of extinction. The middle way actually is the way between those two, becoming and non-becoming. So these are a negative view of becoming and non-becoming. And the words might not work perfectly for us, but the idea is violence is destructive. Violence is tending to make things go away. It's a direction of nihilism. Harmfulness, you want somebody to suffer. Violence, you go kill somebody. Harmfulness, you want them to suffer. You stick them in a chamber and you do drip water, or sharp pointy instruments or whatever. You want suffering to happen. These are very dark things, but one is creative in its own dark way and the other is destructive. So non-harming and non-violence talk to those 2 things that come out of any negative feeling tones we have, that we point either inwards to ourselves or outwards to other people. This is taking that non-violence and looking very much back at the Indic roots of this. And if you go back into the Yoga Sutras and things that came before that, Gandhi was very much, satyagraha, non-violence. That's what this is about. It's trying to land this precept in that larger arena, in that very large arena. It is the abode of the law of all Buddhas. It is the source of the law of all Buddhas. Taken directly, plagiarized. As Tom Lehrer once said, plagiarize, plagiarize, plagiarize. Let no one else's work evagerize. This came directly out of Dogen's precepts, Dogen's version of the precepts. It is the basic law. It's where we start. We've got to start with stop. Don't hurt, don't destroy. Just stop right there. I vow to make every effort to wake up to my true nature, to see clearly and to live in accordance with what is true. This comes from the word which I will butcher in Sanskrit, is brahmacharya, which means living the way of the Brahma, approximately. You can shake your head if you disagree. It's close enough?
No.
Close enough. Difficult talking to a room full of people who understand the native languages here.
Yeah.
But in simple terms, that's what that comes from. But brahmacharya, as it's come down to us, is largely used as a vow for sexual abstinence. And I don't understand the trajectory that it took to end up there, but that's the trajectory brahmacharya took. So when you come across brahmacharya today, it is generally used in that context. But the root word just simply means living the way of the Brahma. So how do we live? We wake up to our true nature. That's the primary purpose here. That's what we're all about. And you can say, well, no, we do compassion first. Well, you do compassion first, but compassion actually at its root is all about seeing our true nature. For me to feel true compassion for somebody, I have to truly, truly know that person is me. The compassion of my left hand for my right hand is because they know they're different and yet they are the same. So compassion is fundamentally inseparable from seeing our true nature. And our true nature is, I am not this. I think there's a sack of skin and bones here, and this is me, this is mine, this is what I am. Ain't true. It's a complete story. There's a bunch of stuff happening over here, but it's just stuff happening. It's no different from the stuff happening there, and the stuff happening there, and the stuff happening there, and the stuff happening on the street outside, right? There's all this activity and consciousness that's happening, and there's this terrible mistake. Well, there's this, on one hand, it's a beautiful mistake, but it becomes a terrible mistake when it turns to suffering. There is this beautiful mistake that glorifies in experiencing this consciousness, in this wonderful happening. But the problem is when that starts to calcify into this form, we create suffering, which is, wanting more, wanting less, whatever it is. Our true nature is before this attraction into a sense of self, before this coalescing into a sense of self. Our true nature is just of this amazing, incredible happening, this amazing, incredible play of consciousness. That is our true nature. And when we see our true nature, from there we can understand what's happening with all this coalescing into beings and the arising of suffering, and we can move into that. So I vow to make every effort to wake up to my true nature, which is what we're doing sitting here this morning. It's what we're doing in this conversation. To see clearly. To see clearly is to see clearly now, and to take that away from us, to be mindful in everyday life. When we find ourselves stubbing our toe, if we start to feel emotions rising up, pause. See if we can see more clearly what's happening, because that ain't what we think it is. It ain't what we think it is. When we feel emotions arising, when we feel attraction or rejection happening, it's not what we think. Pause. See if we can come back to a true nature. See if we can see clearly. And to live in accordance with what is true. It is possible to see clearly and to then try to take advantage of that. It's possible to go down a spiritual path and build up some mystical powers over other people and use that for self-advancement. No. Bad. Don't do that. Live in accordance with what's true, which is this absolutely boundless compassion. It is the teaching of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which and the path of one who practices, and that which is practiced. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi is, when it's translated, it is usually as something like Supreme Perfect Enlightenment. More often than not, it is not translated, because how do you even put that into words? You really can't. Same with the Buddha's just not translated, because you can't really put that into words. But this is that teaching. This is that teaching. To see clearly and to live that life of clarity is precisely Supreme Perfect Awakening. It is the path, and is that which is practiced on the path. I vow to make every effort to live and be lived selflessly for the benefit of all beings. To live and be lived. This is recognizing the falsity of this boundary I create and I place between myself and everything else. That boundary is entirely artificial. Right now, as I'm sitting here, there is air going in through my skin. Literally, there is air going through my skin. The surface layer of my skin is breathing. In addition to what's going on through my lungs, there's breathing going on. Right now, there are cells falling off, dead cells falling off. There's bacteria floating around in the air that's landing on my skin and finding nourishment there. This is going on all the time. There is no real boundary here. There just isn't. So to live and be lived is to, and one of my favorites, I've lost the math, but something like 50% of the DNA biomass in my body and something like 80% of the diversity of DNA in my body is something other than what I would call Gareth's genetic material. This is not what I think it is. It's just not. So this is being lived. There is a whole universe living inside this of other beings. That's without even worrying about other energetic beings in here as well. Which of course there's all my childhood energetic beings. There's all sorts of stuff going on here that is living here in this ecosystem. To live and be lived selflessly. Let go of that sense of self. Let go of all the boundaries and just be alive. Very simply. For the benefit of all beings, including this being, and all the beings inside this being. For the benefit of all beings. And for the benefit of all beings is for the release of suffering of all beings. I teach two things, suffering and the end of suffering. The benefit of all beings is precisely working to end the suffering of all beings. I dedicate completely and absolutely everything that is going on here for the universal release of suffering. It is transcending profane and holy. These are just labels. There's no good, there's no bad. There's just suffering, the end of suffering. Separating anything is just causing more suffering. And taking self and others across. This is true nature we've talked about, and this is the conditioned realm. We have to recognize, once we realize, wake up to our true nature, we realize there is a conditioned realm, and we have to take what's going on in the conditioned realm seriously. There are a bunch of people who are suffering. There are a bunch of animals who are suffering. To say, no, you're not what you think you are, forget it, it's just not helpful. That's not releasing suffering at all. That's not what I'm vowing to do. So it is taking self, this artificial self that is showing up in the conditioned realm, hopefully somewhat skillfully, but it's showing up here, and everybody it encounters, everything it encounters, taking all of that suffering across to the place of release of suffering, complete ending of suffering. So that is what that's about. Those are my words. What does that bring up for you folks? Questions, comments, thoughts? Rosemary.
Okay. Rosemary with the big mouth. The question it brings up for me is the reality and significance of time and
Of
I just
time,
heard
did you say?
time.
Yeah.
So, and you were mentioning your childhood,
Mhm.
I have to get back into the Wizards of Wales.
Mhm.
But so the present, I just heard something like this. The present embraces the past and embraces what is to become, and there's all this mishmash. I think, especially in some New Age Santa Fe type crystal Buddhism. Forgive me. That like says time does not exist. I really can't tell you, whether we're going to be together tomorrow or not because time doesn't exist. And it's always bothered me because time is wonderful in a way, and yet it's destructive. But it's just like beyond my understanding. I just have to say that. And so hearing you talking about the present self being encompassing the past and being the seed of the future is nice.
So time is mysterious, to say the least. Time, we live in time, but time co-arises with everything else. So as this set of experiences and consciousness all come together and coalesce and form a Gareth, they also bring together a sense of time, because this forming of Gareth is an event. Events have to have a frame of reference, and that frame of reference is simply time. And the same thing is happening everywhere, lots of different loci in this room. And these are all interconnected. So my sense of time is not separate than your sense of time, or Lauren's sense of time, or Prashant's sense of time. These are all interconnected because the way this is co-arising is so interconnected. It is an integral part of this conditioned world in which we live. The conditioned world exists in time and space. We created time and space as we created the world. It's the fabric that the world's kind of stringing itself together, bootstrapping itself into existence in. So we have to take it seriously in that realm. And when we start talking about beings and the end of suffering, it's there. But when we wake up to our true nature in that place, it doesn't exist. That is just pure awareness. And if you want to go and look something up on YouTube, look up the 10th consciousness and watch the 10th consciousness. It is about 10 or 11 minutes long. It will blow your mind, and you will think, oh, I understand. And then 5 minutes later you'll say, okay, I get the first three, maybe the fourth, but I don't remember anything else. But what it does is it's a very simple description of how 10 dimensions is sufficient to describe every possible conceivable universe. So I would posit a way of looking at this is that this presence, this awareness, our true nature, is that out of which all of this arises. And what we have access to here that we make ourselves up out of gives us this four-dimensional realm. Arguably we have the 5 dimensions, because the 5th dimension is arguably free will. It's that which can cross between different temporal dimensions, temporal axes. But that's what we have access to. But that's not to say the other stuff's not out there, accessible elsewhere. It all comes out of this true nature. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, my bottom line is it's a great mystery. And I think you're not really saying time exists because I'm creating it, you Gareth and me Rosemary. And I think it's just, well, I think, but I'll say it in Sanskrit, so it'll be true. It just seems like it's a condition of the universe, whether I exist or not. And I don't understand it, and I don't understand how it can exist simultaneously, or how we can remember, or how other people can be alive or not alive, or how now is different from before, but I know it is. I just like, that's not my job. I can't. It's because, I'm only pitiful, not pitiful, I'm a limited human being. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we just have to have wonder.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anand?
Yeah, Gareth, when you talked about the refuges, I actually was thinking recently about it is accessible, it is right there for everyone. I thought you said for, I don't remember exactly, but I also thought that it is available for everyone, like
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
a good person or a bad person or
Absolutely.
any kind of person, any kind of being. That refuge, it's matter of recognizing that is available. That's I think during my meditation, I just got that feeling like, okay, I'm not practicing lately. I'm not committing or something. Then I got that realization. It's there.
Yeah.
So
It's always there, you're right.
It's
It's
always
always there.
there.
If we can notice it, if we can
yeah, and it's
slow
there,
down and notice it, it's
always
always
there
there.
for everyone, right? Even the people who don't practice. And
Yeah.
that's the experience I got. So I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that, Buddha never called himself, I say never. Buddha did not call himself Buddha, he called himself Tathagata. Thus come is intentionally an epithet that it points to not landing. It is not a sectarian epithet. It's talking about this universal accessibility of waking up, of being able to take refuge.
What was that word? Tathagata?
Tathagata, Tathagata.
Meaning, insofar as things can be translated.
It means, well, Tata, Agata, and means, I forget which way around, but I think Tathagata means thus come, Tata Agata means thus gone. So it's intentionally a play on words that means thus come, thus gone. And if you read the Diamond Sutra, it says nowhere to come, nowhere to go. So don't worry about what it means. It's just simply pointing at not landing. It's consciousness that doesn't land.
That's what it means.
Yeah. That's what it means.
Okay.
What else, folks? Prashant, and then
It's my first time speaking. I'm a little nervous. And,
you have a lot of support here.
Yes.
You need to feel nervous, Prashant.
Practice on Zoom.
So on the topic of suffering, I've been going through a lot of things this past year. A lot of changes, a lot of things ending and new things beginning. Went through a divorce and things are changing. I have 2 kids, so I'm in separate homes and things like that. And a lot of as I'm going through this process, meditation's helping me a lot, but all these emotions are bubbling up a lot, and it's really hard to not assign blame and
Yes.
things like that, blaming her or blaming me for things that happened, and the suffering is there, and I'm trying to work through all this through meditation, and I'm trying to practice these vows, and a lot of things that happened in my life were related to some addictions and alcohol and things like that. That now when I think about it, I just think about the vows. It really helps me get through these type of moments, and I'm getting there, but it's that middle ground and trying to not blame myself and harm myself in this process. I think it's part of the process for me to go through it and feel it, and then come out of it with some kind of clarity of letting go of what happened and things like that. No violence or anything like that happened. It's just life happened, and we were growing apart, and things like that were happening. So that's what I'm going through right now, and being here, really with everybody here, helps me, and your talks help me get some perspective and try to practice things that I really needed in my life from the beginning, and I think it's all helping me. So I appreciate all you guys and being here and being part of this group.
Prashant, thank you so much. Thank you for speaking. You just offered us all a wonderful gift. Thank you so much. I'll say a few words and then we'll move on to the vows. So, I was divorced 12, 13 years ago. and looking back, it was really the result of alcohol. I had 2 kids who were in their teens at the time. It was really, really difficult. There's no way out of it being really, really difficult. The practice is not going to solve difficult. It's not going to change that. What hopefully the practice will do, and you are finding from the practice, is giving you access to peace. It's helping you slow things down, and then be able from there to take that move into not blaming, or a couple of breaths before you open your mouth and you don't exacerbate an already bad situation and all that. So that's enough on that. And I will offer just 2 other things. These are just things that are happening. Bruce will touch on this maybe. Well, maybe you won't now because I'm going to touch on it. In December we had a precepts offering ceremony where, I forget the number, was it 13 people? A bunch of people received the precepts. Which is a way of saying, this practice is really making a difference in my life. And I want to make that as a really strong affirmative statement, both for myself and for the community. I want to just make that statement. So if you're interested in that, we're doing that again in July, and you and I should talk about that. The other thing is there are a number of people, several people in this room and a number of people not in the room, with whom I have regular practice discussions. So it's a conversation typically about once a month, and that is about how practice can help and support your life. It's some of it is specifically about issues in practice, but a lot of it is about how practice can help and support your life. Because if it can't help and support your life, what the hell are you doing here? Go find something that can, right? So that is not a substitute for therapy. It does totally different stuff. Therapy works horizontally in time. This works vertically in time, right? But if that's something you're interested in, having a conversation and seeing if you want to start doing that, then let me know and we can do that. With that, let's finish off with our it's on the green sheet, isn't it? Let's finish off with the 4 precepts, the 4 bodhisattva vows on the green sheet. Beings are numberless, I vow to awaken them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless, I vow to awaken them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless, I vow to awaken them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Announcements, Bruce.
Okay, let's see. Our regular activity